Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this second day of our training from lab to public ocean literacy in action. Yesterday, we had a great session, which took place at the same time, 10 to 12 Central European Summer Time. We had over 130 people joining from over 30 countries. And really a very good discussion. It was mostly a silent discussion because we were exchanging views via Slido poll and Slido Mentimeter poll, and also a collaborative space where people were sharing ideas about different questions that we asked. We had an incredibly active participation from everybody and recorded everything. And later on, you will hear some of the first ideas and reactions from us as to what we heard yesterday from you. Well, my name is Dina Iparkina. I am here for the European Global Ocean Observing System, EuroGOOS, and the EU for Ocean Coalition. And it is with EU for Ocean Coalition that we organize this training. Let me change my slides. So yesterday, as I said,
Dina, you were not sharing, sorry.
Ocean literacy, there was absolutely no disagreement about why ocean literacy is important for not just education, but also for policy and for scientific research itself. We learned about the EU for Ocean Coalition, about the global movement on ocean literacy, which is spearheaded by UNESCO, and about our own EuroGOOS project, Scientists for Ocean Literacy, and our Ocean Literacy Working Group, which unites scientists, marine scientists, as advocates and active contributors to ocean literacy. And we also reflected some on the key insights and shared perspectives. And as I said, this session was incredibly well engaged by everybody, and we had fantastic interaction altogether.
Dina, excuse
me.
I think you are not sharing.
We are looking deeper into the storytelling in science. We believe that marine science offers a fantastic and very inspiring ground for us to share stories, share the scientists' experiences, share the scientists' knowledge, share the scientists' successes, but also problems, share the curiosity that we all have towards the ocean, and the ocean really truly inspires us. We will also have a practical exercise to build some of the skills to craft clear, engaging messages which are targeted to your audience. And we will have a debate altogether on how to improve our storytelling. We all have something else to learn every day about how we can communicate with more openness, with more efficiency, and more impact. But before we dive into today's amazing session, I would like to remind you about the EU for Ocean Coalition. This is a European Union initiative which brings together organizations, individuals, managers, businesses, public authorities, ocean advocates across three main communities: one for stakeholders, the EU for Ocean platform; one for youth advocates and early career ocean professionals, Youth for Ocean; and one for schools who can join this movement of ocean literacy and become a blue school and form a network of European blue schools to really jointly promote ocean literacy education across the European continent. This coalition unites different ocean basins or sea basins in Europe, but also works globally. And we heard yesterday from both the European Commission and UNESCO, and this collaboration has been ongoing for years already. So you have here a QR code, you can scan it and go to the EU for Ocean Coalition's web pages on the European Commission portal. You can find out how to join the efforts, you can hear about the news and events, and we hope to see you in this coalition in the near future. I also want to remind you about our own resources here in Eurogoods. As I said, we have an ocean literacy working group and a project, Scientists for Ocean Literacy, which is an action within the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And in these activities, we have a repository of resources, ocean literacy resources, games, coloring pages, children books, books which can actually be helpful for adults to read as well if they are not familiar with the ocean matters. Ready to use, openly available sometimes in many different European languages. So please, you can scan this QR code and take a look at those resources. Maybe you can use them in your activities. And now a quick recap on what we are looking at today. So day 2 of our training. After my opening, I will pass over to my dear colleague here, Ana Teresa de Magalhães. I was learning to pronounce this name, and I think I'm succeeding, to present the outcomes of yesterday's collaborative exercise. And then we will dive into the wisdom of our experts, Eric Van Sibyl, Tiago Garcia, and Laura Sucoron, who will give us the trade secrets of good communication, what constitutes communication from academic and psychological and anthropological perspective, but also how to use communication to our best advantage. And of course, what we want to achieve is a sustainable future for us all. So without further ado, let me pass over to Ana Teresa, who has been also actively supporting and organizing this webinar for us. And thanks again for that. And Ana Teresa, the floor is yours, and then you will moderate the rest of the day with my closing at the end.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dina.
I will stop sharing now.
Thank you. I think you're already able to see my screen. Well, so yesterday we had this...
Just to unmute.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Well, so yesterday...
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Well, so yesterday we were able to understand a bit more about what participants, are the participants' engagement on science communication as well on ocean literacy. And you might remember that we had this Canva. In this Canva, you were able to place your ideas, also to include some to the answers of the questions that we posed to you. And this is a summary of what we thought, of what we found yesterday. One of the questions were why engaging beneficiaries and stakeholders is an important process in science. And what we could find from this discussion is that for most participants, this is a process that is important to build trust, relevance, and sustainability of the projects. So engaging people in the scientific process also is about transparency, trust, and relationship, ensures acceptance and uptake of solutions, value local knowledge, and connect science to society, and also creates long-term impact and mindset change. So this is also important in terms of transparency, because we know that many of the scientific projects are also funded by public funds. And returning this back to society is a way to ensure as well transparency and give the science back to the communities that are funding them. Another aspect of our discussion yesterday was regarding the opportunities to engage in science. We know that there are many, but for this group of participants, the most common forms of participation and engaging stakeholders and beneficiaries are events, so through workshops, cleanups, festivals, also conferences. Through social media, we know that some of you also have channels, because you mentioned that in the discussion yesterday, but also in the chat. Instagram is a channel that appeared many times, the name, and we will be discussing this as well along those sessions. Videos, campaigns. Another form to engage stakeholders, but also beneficiaries, is through education. Going to schools, connecting with youth, developing programs, also connecting with universities. Digital tools are as well another opportunity. So webinars such as this one that we are organizing, but also webinars to disseminate science, hackathons, online meetings, and another opportunity to engage its governance. So connecting with the groups that we are in touch. Living labs, consultations is another form to engage, mixed stakeholder groups, and etc. We also asked you how do you think we could engage better with those beneficiaries and stakeholders? And across the questions, across the answers, we could see that you mentioned that listening is important, is an important process also when we do science, co-creating solutions, blend digital and in-person strategies when we communicate science, but also creating relationships. So go beyond the events, the one-off events, but creating relationships with those that are our beneficiaries, our partners, or funders as well. Use a simple local knowledge and also visual tools to communicate science, to engage with people that are part of the process, and sharing stories and emotional connections, because we also know that science is a complex process. So sometimes we need as well a way to share this this material on with visually, on a way that is also creating empathy with those that are on the other side. So sharing stories, also creating emotional connections, is something that you also mentioned and pointed as important. Another way on how to engage with the beneficiaries and stakeholders is getting feedback through surveys and interviews. So this is another aspect that appeared on our discussion. And how would what success would look like in this scenario where we apply ocean communication as well? We use ocean literacy to better engage our stakeholders and beneficiaries. You mentioned that in this scenario of success, we would have empowered communities acting pro-conservation, so people with different behaviors that support conservation, ongoing collaboration between science, society, and policy. And I can say this is a dream for everyone that works with science. Stakeholders very engaged beyond the project end, and tangible results such as behavior change, ecosystem restoration, and improved livelihoods. And just one summary of who we are in this group, because yesterday from Mentimeter we could understand a bit more of your background and also know a bit more about you, about your background, your age as well, where you are in your career. So we are a group of more or less 130 participants from more than 30 countries across the board, and majority early career scientists. The main communication channels that you are using today to communicate science are conferences, schools, and social media. And we'll be discussing this topic and others during the session today. But I would like to first ask all of you to open your cameras, because the sessions today will be highly interactive. And to the next discussion that we'll have today, we'll be talking about the science behind science communication. And I would like to call to the floor Eric Van Sebille, who is a professor in oceanography and public engagement at the Utrecht University. It's not often that we reflect on the impact of what we create on science communication. So Eric will bring to us a review, a critical review on how how science communication also has a science behind. So please, Eric, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Anna, and great to be here, and great to be able to share with so many of you our work that we've been doing on the science behind science communication. So as Anna said, I am an oceanographer. I am a professor of oceanography here in Utrecht University. I added this photo of myself here in the Southern Ocean with a bucket full of salps, for those of you to really show that I go out to the ocean. I'm a physical oceanographer by background, and trying to understand how ocean currents move stuff around. And since 5 years or so, I also lead a group in the Department of Science Communication. And there we do research about how science communication actually works and what effective science communication is and public engagement. Because there's really not that much known, right? If you think about it, all parts of our workflow, of our academic workflow, have a protocol. We know how to set up a hypothesis, we know how to do data analysis, we know how to publish, everything is protocolized except for science communication. Science communication is very often more an art or a craft than a science. And I don't think it has to be. I think there is science that you can do on science communication. And that is what I want to show 4 or 5 examples of today. And it starts out with this review article that we did when I just became a professor in science communication with a postdoc, Francis Wijnen. We just investigated how often, if science communicators, if they publish about science communication activities, public engagement activities on climate in this case, how often do they actually evaluate the effectiveness of that science communication? And what we found, that in 10 years, there were only 7 articles published about science communicators, from science communicators who actually did an analysis, did the aims that they start out when they did their science communication activity, did they actually reach those aims? So I really call on all of you to take that more serious, to check whether what you wanted to do, whether that actually has worked. Because otherwise, you don't know whether you are effective. Now, the first example of the type of research that we do is a public engagement, is about a public engagement activity. And particularly it started when I realized that very often when I go to schools, and especially when I speak to primary school children, I get a question about my research. Namely, a big part of my oceanographic research is the analysis of drifters, drifting buoys. We put them into the ocean, and then they move with the ocean flows, and we use them to track plastic, plankton through the ocean. And often when I would have discussed this in schools, I would get the question at the end from one of the kids, do you pick them up at the end? Do you pick those drifters up? And I would say, no, we don't, because it is really very difficult to pick them up. We don't know exactly where they are. Ships are very expensive. Ships are very polluting. So we leave them behind in the ocean at the end. And as soon as I would say that, I would be I was a polluter. I would have had, the children didn't believe me anymore, didn't accept me anymore, because I was immoral. I was polluting the ocean myself. So I was wondering, well, what is a good response? What is a good response that actually works? What do the public like to hear when you have to tell them, well, we are polluting the ocean. We are putting those drifters or other instruments into the ocean. Argo floats, another example, which we don't retrieve at the end. What do we do about that? So with Remco Slijderink, who's a master student, we did a 2-part analysis, research. First of all, we did a focus group discussions with oceanographers, colleagues of mine, who also put drifters in the ocean. And we asked them, well, if you have this kind of public engagement, then what kind of response do you give? What are the responses that you use if you get a question, well, are you polluting the ocean? And we found 5 of them. One is, well, to collect as much litter, to explain the development of more environmentally friendly drifters, to explain the cost-benefit ratio of the experiment, saying essentially, well, yes, there's a little bit of pollution that we put in the ocean, but in the end, we are learning so much about the ocean that that is much bigger benefit than the pollution that we put in. To start an open dialogue, essentially asking, well, what do you think we should do? And the final one, which was actually the most popular by the oceanographers, is to just say, well, yes, we are putting pollution in the ocean, but really it is a tiny, tiny amount compared to all the other pollution that is put in the ocean. This is really nothing. So those were the responses that oceanographers would give. And then we gave those responses to the public, almost 100 people at public engagement events. And we asked them, how strong do you think those are? Do you support those responses? And interestingly, especially the last one, explained that other sources of pollution are much larger, was really not liked. It was statistically significantly lower scored than all of the other ones. The most favorite one was the top one: collect as much litter as you put in. So at the end of an expedition or a cruise, go back, and do a beach cleanup, so that the total amount of pollution that you put in the ocean is the same. But it's interesting that the initial response, namely, well, we are doing, yes, we are polluting, but it is not that significant compared to the global scale of it, it's just not very, very nicely received. And the reason, I think, is that we are scientists. We are the heroes of this story. We should be even holier than the Pope in some ways, right? We should really be the ones that are doing the best. And how can we be polluting and saving the ocean at the same time? So that then goes to the next line of research that we're doing, is analyzing, well, how do scientists themselves frame them? How do scientists frame themselves in their own science communication? And in particular, what we're looking at is press releases written by institutes around the world, and figuring out, well, what kind of roles and what kind of frames are the scientists using when they talk about their research in their press releases. This is work by Eike Vonk, who's a PhD candidate in my group. And talking about heroes, well, actually quite a lot of people give themselves, quite a lot of scientists give themselves the role of hero in a press release. So what Eike did was she looked at press releases both on ocean and climate change, a total of 235, and of ocean and plastic, a total of 88, and then coded what kind of roles there were in 25% or so of the press releases. There was actually a role of the scientist. In the ocean and climate change, it was very often the victim role, whereas in ocean and plastic, it was much more often the hero role, interestingly, right? Although sometimes it was also the villain role. And very often it was also the warner role. And what she then also did in this work is that she looked at, well, what kind of moral evaluation is there? And interestingly, for ocean plastic, there was much more blaming society and saying that society is responsible for treatment. This is quite an interesting difference between press releases on ocean and climate change versus press releases on ocean plastic. If you want to see more about this, the paper is published. There's much more analysis also on other types of frames and narrative elements. There's much more detail. I now just wanted to highlight this. Now, these are the press releases. What Eike did next was that she investigated, well, how many of those press releases are actually picked up in the media, in newspapers. English language newspapers she analyzed specifically for the ocean plastic data set. And then she looked at, well, 4 press releases that picked up by either no newspaper articles in the first column, by less than 5 newspaper articles in the middle column, or by 5 or more articles in the right column. How often are there certain what we call news factors in those press releases? And there's a few very, very interesting ones here. For example, bad news. The press releases that have more than 5 or more mentions in the newspaper have much more bad news. So putting bad news in your press release actually increases the chance of it getting into the newspapers. Interestingly, scientific relevance is the other way around. Not mentioning, if your press release mentions scientific relevance, it has a higher chance of not being cited at all. So don't talk about the scientific relevance, but talk about the societal or the political relevance, right? Or the novelty of the study. What was also the economic relevance was very positively correlated. So talk about these kind of things. Those are the things that get picked up and that then end up in a newspaper. And finally, the third analysis that Eike did in a study that is now accepted in geoscience communication is that she looked at, well, what happens to the storyline between the press release and the newspaper articles. And for that, she looked again at the framing, the type of information, the type of messaging that was in the press release. And here I show an example of one specific press release, but she did this for 14 different press releases. And she looked at, are certain frames, are they present? So if it's white, it's not present. And if it's colored, it is present. So in this press release, there was talk about the treatment recommendation. There was an urgency to take action. It was said that society was responsible for fixing it. The cause was also society and industry a bit. And the problem was very much biological. So that was the information that was in the press release. And then Eike analyzed how much of that actually ends up in the newspaper. And that's this. So the treatment recommendation was very often taken up, although some newspapers only talked about the biological problem. In fact, all newspaper articles talked about the biological problem. Almost all talked about the industry as being the cause. And then some, well, the more we go, the more of the frames got dropped. But there were also frames that were added. That industry is responsible for treatment. That was never in the press release, but it got added in the newspaper article. And that the politics was responsible for treatment the same. So again, this is just one small example. There's much more information on the full paper if you want to have a read on this. And this really shows that you can do science behind science communication. How do you analyze this? And with that, I want to wrap up. These are my three conclusions. The first one, the most important one, science communication is a science. Its effectiveness can be tested. Second one is don't assume that the public shares the same values as you. Get out of your bubble and check your assumptions. And that is especially related to the story I told about the drifters and what to do, how to deal with negativity about polluting effects of our research. And the third one is then don't think about what you want to send, but think what your audience wants to receive. Your stories and frames are taken over by the media. And that means that you have much more impact than you think you might have. There's a lot of what's called journalism. Journalists that just copy press releases verbatim because they don't know much more than that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. And indeed, that it's very enlightening also to learn from you in this sense. I didn't know this aspect of the bad news, but it shows how we also need to frame differently our messages when we talk to the media. So now I would like to call our next speakers. We will have a hands-on session now, which is our workshop on science communication. We will learn from Laura Securon and Thiago Garcia. Laura Securon is an environmental communication strategist and founder at Meridian Agency, working at the intersection of ocean and climate action to drive awareness, policy, and impact. And Thiago Garcia is the communication officer and ocean literacy expert at Atlantic Collab. Laura, up to you.
Thank you. I'm going to share a couple presentations and they are recorded because we wanted to make sure that they worked well. So I'll start sharing the first one. Today, I am Laura Securon, and I will be presenting the results of
Laura,
this study that we've done.
please.
Oh.
Yeah, if you can share and open in full screen mode.
Oh, it is in full screen mode.
Not right now, no.
Oh, I can't change it because it's a recording.
Okay. Well,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
no
Yes.
problem.
Sorry about it.
The utilization of sea-surface stereo image to basically measure directional wind waves and oceanic waves, particularly in Portugal. So before we start, I wanted to thank all the people who've been involved in this work, because it's been a lot. So Praia do Norte, Atlantic Plus, Forum Oceano, the rest of the academic institutions, thank you. And so without further ado, so what was the challenge that we were trying to sort through this work? Basically, there were many limitations to conventional oceanographic measurements. So these include substantial implementation costs, intricate deployment requirements, and ongoing maintenance needs. Traditional wave measurement. Traditional wave measurement stereo devices, they necessitate a lot of space and operational overhead. And so that just makes it really hard to deploy them in all the environments that they need to be. And there's also cost constraints and operational complexities associated with basically what we've been using as a standard measurement of waves. And so basically the objectives of the research were to develop measurement capabilities that were through readily available electronics, specifically focusing on smartphones. And the investigation aims to establish the sorry, I just realized I wasn't sharing. Wait a second. Sorry. Yeah, it's the same. So so the investigation aims to establish the viability of consumer device utilization in the specific scientific measurement. So the documented potential for the expanded data collection is we think is positive, right? So what were the methods? So the research team utilized to synchronize smartphones positioned in synchronize tripods to basically correlate and look at what we call time-like cross correlation. So you have, if you want to get into it, some of the equations that were used below, but this system can basically create detailed three-dimensional surface elevation maps and measure key wave parameters. So height, period, what you would usually measure on a wave. And we realized that had a very small square error, basically, so that it worked well to estimate the perfect estimation of peak wave periods. So the results. Okay. I think hold on a second, sorry. Yeah. Okay, ignore this photo is wrong, is not from the right place. So yeah, ignore the photo, but you know what I mean. It's basically, it's a similar system. Tiago, I think he sent me the wrong photo. Okay, it's fine. So yeah, the results were that you can see the study area, and that the green dot is basically where the stereo, again, not the right location, but it's kind of the same thing. So it shows where the stereo system was located and how it works. Basically, you can see the time series and how it got deployed. And basically what you can see at the bottom is how we can do this 3D surface grid kind of reconstruction of the wave. And that's basically been the impact of our work so far. So as you can see, it's been published in many publications, and we are proud that is the case. It's been really difficult to get here. It's been a lot of work. And not everybody's it's been as collaborative as we would have liked, but we made it through, and this is these are the results. So as a conclusion, so people we should care about the wave tracker because it is providing accurate real-time data on massive ocean waves using advanced stereo technology, and the information is crucial for safety of extreme sports, coastal management, and scientific understanding of ocean dynamics. So we've addressed the limitations of the traditional kind of wave measuring methods, and this way we can enhance decision making for surfers, rescue teams, and researchers bringing both practical and scientific innovations to understanding these powerful ocean forces. So thanks for listening, and again, thanks to all the partners.
Thank you. And now I'm going to share the second presentation.
Hello, everybody. How are we feeling? I am so excited to be here today because we're going to talk about how to measure giants, that is, big waves. So I would love to know before we start if there's any surfers in the room. If any of you, it counts as if you're a wannabe surfer like myself. If there are any surfers in the room, would you let me know?
The video is black,
Let us
so
know where
if you
you're
can
from.
reshare it. Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
gracious. Okay. Good thing we recorded, so it wouldn't do exactly this. Okay. I will share again.
I think you're going to particularly enjoy this. Hello, everybody. How are we feeling? I'm so excited to be here today because we're going to talk about how to measure giants, that is, big waves. So I would love to know before we start if there's any surfers in the room. If any of you, it counts as if you're a wannabe surfer like myself. If there are any surfers in the room, would you let me know in the comments? Let us know where you're from. I think you're going to particularly enjoy this. But if you're not a surfer, rest assured, this is still going to be mighty interesting. So we're going to start with like a little test that I would love to run by you all. We're going to try to measure waves by eye. So I'm going to play two videos for you from two world-class surfers, Maya and Justine. And you're going to let me know which of the two waves you think is largest. So we're going to start with Maya. Okay, that was Maya. My hands are sweating. And it's in Nazaré. They are both in the same location. So now we're going to go to Justine.
Não, acho que a gente... Pare!
And that was Justine. Do you have an idea in your head of like which wave was bigger? You can also drop it in the comments. Let us know, like Maya or Justine. I would love to know which way the votes go. Okay, so now that you've decided mentally, I'm going to give you the answer, which is, drum roll, please. We don't know. We actually don't know. These women spend years of their career to be able to surf basically the equivalent of buildings. But we actually have no way of verifying which of the two waves was biggest. And this is because measuring big waves has been historically mission impossible. There's many reasons behind that. The first one is that single point methodologies like satellites or sensors on buoys are actually not very useful for these like three-dimensional, very dynamic, complex phenomena. If we were to try to put a sensor directly on the wave, that would be basically the equivalent of throwing a GoPro inside a washing machine, so also not particularly useful in the objective measuring of them. Trying to place those sensors is also very risky in those like high, wave impact areas. And what's also really difficult is that we don't have like an objective way to measure the bottom of the wave. So when you look at this image, for example, where do you think the bottom of this wave is? What of these three lines? Which one of these would you say is the bottom of the wave? Historically, the way we've measured this is subjectively. So folks have been deciding where the bottom of the wave is subjectively, which obviously leads to like massive discrepancies between one wave or another. And we had no solution for that. The equipment is also expensive, it is hard to scale, and therefore big wave tracking has been really, really difficult until now. So I am really delighted to introduce you to what is a scientific and technological breakthrough that we think is going to make wave tracking so much more easy going forward. The invention fundamentally is stereo video technology that combines two existing cameras. It can be done with phone technology that already exists in the market to kind of cross-reference the data and come up with these beautiful three-dimensional maps of the waves that you're seeing. So the state-of-the-art technology, first, it eliminates the subjective guessing. So there's no more trying to, estimate geometrical shapes for a wave or try to decide where the bottom is. It is much more scalable and flexible. It can be used for waves, but also potentially offshore and in a lot of other places. It provides not just height, but a lot of accurate 3D data about the shape, the speed of the wave, like we've never had before. And it also costs much less. And so it can be used and deployed in many more places. Fundamentally, the difference is also that this has been scientifically verified over and over and compared to existing technologies to show that actually it is a much more accurate system. So why would these matter so much? Obviously, if you're a surfer, it matters because of the enhanced safety of it. These waves are incredibly dangerous, and understanding them better can increase the safety of everybody on the water. Also performance for athletes, being able to understand exactly the dynamics and the details of the waves that they have surfed can help them prepare for future ones. It will increase consistency and transparency around, all the measurements that we need for awards, and it will stop, the bickering between world-class surfers who otherwise will never know if they actually rode the biggest wave. And that also translates into money, like, the World Surf League brings millions and millions in revenue to coastal areas, including Nazaré, and it is not negligible at all. But looking further at how we have to estimate now the increase of rogue waves and how we need to manage our coasts to be able to handle things like floods and climate change and erosion, this technology can also really serve local communities and coastal planners to be able to look ahead and manage what the ocean is doing to their coast more effectively. So if you, like us, are very excited about this, we would love you to join in unveiling the majesty of these ocean giants. You can check the QR here, and it's going to take you to a website where you can find all the scientific research behind it. You can meet the team behind this incredible breakthrough, and you will also find ways in which you can collaborate with us or help us bring this technology to your particular coast. So thank you so much for your time today. Have a great one.
Thank you all. I think I'm gonna pass it on to Tiago to explore some of what we just saw.
Hi everyone, very good morning. I'm right now in the Azores in a surf trip. It's a cool coincidence, and it's great to make a break in between amazing waves to talk to you about something that I love so much, which is marine science communication and how can then boost or not ocean literacy. For those of you who have not joined Laura from the beginning, we just had kind of a theater play here. As you saw, Laura brilliantly demonstrated or showcased completely different ways of presenting science. In the first one, obviously, not much care about design, kind of a boring monochordic presence, lots of typos, lots of Comic Sans, wrong pictures, lots of reference to achievements of the person speaking, logos, etc., etc., etc. And then on the second part of our theater play, Laura gave a completely different speech. She clearly worked with a great designer. She made sure she was telling a story, and so on and on and on. You just saw it. They couldn't be more contrasting. And what we're going to do now is involve you in a discussion about what is a good and a bad science communication presentation. No matter who you are and what you do, I think we all have emotions and we all react to these kind of things. And so let's start. And for that, because we're doing this online, sometimes we do this physically in in physical events with the audience in front of us so we can have a different kind of interaction. But today, and judging from the comments I saw in the chat, we have people all over the world, and we're all here in this amazing internet magic box. But that doesn't allow us to interact with you directly so much. So let's use not only the chat, but also Mentimeter. And Anna will start. We have a few questions for you, and please engage. Please, we really want to know how you feel about these contrasting ways of presenting science. And I think we can start. Anna, if you can go to Mentimeter.
Just 1 second for the participants to connect. I will ask them to or scan the QR code, which is on the screen, or directly go to menti.com and use this code, which is on the screen. So let's just wait to maybe a second so they can connect. I also can copy this this link on the chat so it's easier for everyone to go directly. Here we go.
Yeah,
Dina
the
already
link
did.
is in the chat, just the code. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you, Dina. Okay. So I think we already have it. So I will start presenting the Mentimeter.
All right, here we go. All right, guys. So the first question, and we can already see some results. The first question is, when you prepare a talk, who do you usually have in mind as your main audience? And we have different options, scientific peers, in case you are a researcher or a scientist, science funders and reviewers, policymakers, the youth, the public at large, and other, whatever that is. If you want to comment about this other, you can use the chat. And we can see clearly there's a winner, the public. This is great. This is great that we have so many people already planning their talks and their presentations, thinking the public at large. As Anna said in the beginning, most of research done around the world is funded by public money. We have a responsibility with society, and we have to give back. And it's great that you are already thinking about the citizens who actually pay all of this, and normally are the ones affected by the ocean and coastal problems. That you talk to them. This is really great. So I think we can go on because time is also limited. And Laura, if you want, please step in as usual. So the second question is in one word, and I ask you to type in directly what you have in mind. In one word, how do you feel before before giving a scientific presentation? Okay, this is cool. Anxious and excited, nervous, cool. Let's see if we have more. Yeah, I guess we all relate to these big words here on the screen. Stressed, adrenaline, shaking, trembling. Yeah, been there, done that. Enthusiastic, psyched, amazing. Panic. Oh man, this is now really going places. But yeah, we can see there's a key group. As expected, obviously, we all feel nervous. We all feel a bit anxious. But we also feel excited, perhaps because we love what we do, because we love our mission, because we love to give back, and we see this as an opportunity. And yeah, I think it relates with the previous answers. If people are already planning their talks to the public, then they also feel happy about it, and they feel there's a mission here, perhaps. But of course, we all feel anxious, nervous, and perhaps excited. All right, this is really cool, interesting results. Let's move on. Anna, please. Third question. So as Laura showed, there's many ways to present science. But what we would like to know is during her presentations, these two very contrasting examples, what was the most striking difference between the bad, the first, obviously, and the good, the second talk? Okay, the flow, exactly. Yes. Visual support and pitch. Yeah, as I said in the second one, Laura had a designer supporting her, which produced great visuals. The engagement, yeah. In the first one, I think Laura was, oops, can we go back? Yeah. Laura in the first one was kind of almost falling asleep and very monocording, which sometimes we see people presenting that way, which is strange. And so with so many attentions, let's see if empathy, yeah, exactly. You understand how to talk to the people that are listening instead of just going through.
Extra points to the person who said red screen with green letters. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely not accessible. There was a lot of accessibility errors that would make it really difficult to even appreciate, besides the Comic Sans, which is a hate crime.
Yeah.
But yeah, well done for spotting that. And the confidence too makes a world of a difference when you, we always say with Tiago, if they're worrying about you, they're not worrying about what you're saying. And I think probably a lot of you are quite concerned about my well-being in the sense of like, poor woman, what is she going through? And that obviously instantly steals focus from what it is that you're presenting. So that's why confidence matters.
Voice modulation and body language. This is a key aspect. A lot of people still tend to face the screen when they're talking, not the audience, as if they needed to look at the screen to talk about their own work, which kind of then makes an obstacle, an invisible obstacle. It's like you're talking to the wall, you're not talking to the people that want to hear from you. I mean, there's really good hints here. It will be amazing after this session to explore these results, because there's really, and thank you all for so much comments. This is great. I'm trying to see if I see something that would, yeah, already spoke about the design, confidence.
One thing that Eric mentioned in the previous presentation that I thought was brilliant is this idea of like listening first. And I think, Anna, you also touched on it, like listening first. And that's what engagement shows at the start of a presentation, is like, I'm not presuming I know anything. I think there's value in your point of view. I'm giving you the opportunity to engage early on. And this is not going to be just, me assuming you have nothing to contribute to the conversation. So obviously it's harder to do if you so happen to have an amphitheater of people, but those signs of listening go a long way in folks having a buy-in into what you're saying.
Yeah. I want to pick on this attention grab. The first one followed like a report structure, right? So Laura made an intro, probably she touched the state of the art of that topic. It doesn't really matter what the topic is, because whatever we're discussing is applicable to anything. She then went to the methods, like the equations, the errors, etc., blah, blah, and then the results, the discussion, the conclusion. So basically, Laura was following a report or a research paper structure, and there was no storytelling. On the second one, from the beginning, it was a story, and then you get into the science. So the approach, obviously, the two researchers who would do these presentations, they would have followed completely different approaches preparing. One is just like concerned about kind of reporting what was done, no matter whether that is engaging or not. The second one wants to tell a story that can reach everybody, specifically the public. And from the beginning, Laura got the attention of people with the second one. I think we can move on. Okay. Now, in terms of being effective, which we also saw that in the previous presentation, what exactly, in your opinion, made the good presentation more effective? Yeah. Interesting. It's exactly what we were talking about. Is it the clear storyline, the design visuals? Is it the confidence in her performance? Is it because this is relevance outside, beyond the lab, to the people, in this case, to the surfing community and to the surfing enthusiasts? And we're talking about millions of people around the world, or anything else other. And it seems the visuals. So the designers I work with would be very happy with these answers. The design work, a lot of times, is seen as a secondary aspect of science communication. A lot of researchers don't even have a designer to work with, and they rely on their own skills or, I don't know, templates like Canva and others. And it makes the whole difference to have a designer, as you saw in the examples by Laura. So whether you are a researcher or a coordinator of a large project, or even a research center manager, if you don't have designers in your team, perhaps this here demonstrates the need to invest on a good designer and a good communication team with designers, and not ask your communication officer to do everything, including the design, because, I mean, come on, if you know the work, you know it takes a lot of time. So this is really interesting. Of course, Laura had a clearly storyline to tell, as we mentioned, and she was super confident. From the start, you can tell Laura loved what she was presenting. You could tell she was excited to deliver her talk, and she wanted to reach people. And then, of course, her work connects with real world situations. And this has to be evident in the story and in the performance. Really, really interesting, these results. Thanks again for everybody who is contributing. I think we can continue. Now, this one is a big question. What do you think? And understand, nobody here is judging or criticizing. We're all here to learn. We all, most of us have been a scientist or are scientists, so we all deal with this. So what do you think is the biggest barrier to scientists when they have to reach out to the public? Yeah, for example,
We've both been on both sides of the equation, so
yeah,
safe space.
yeah. So, okay, jargon, yeah. Lack of time, exactly. Lack of time is interesting because lack of time only exists if you think the communication side of your work as a researcher should be planned and done in the end. Because if you start putting communication right from the beginning in your planning, lack of time ends up disappearing. Fear of oversimplifying, really great, because as scientists, a lot of people tend to think if I don't explain everything, if I don't show all the equations, they're not going to get it, and it's not it's not true, you know, like people won't accept it. Guys, when we are delivering these talks, we are not trying to convince a paper evaluator, okay? People couldn't care less about some explanations. They want to know what is the story about and what are the big conclusions and what is that relevant for them. And then institutional culture, yeah, because science exists for centuries, science communication also, but in the structured and planned way that we're talking about, science communication is a much more recent thing. And we still have a lot of people working in science who think, oh, we can talk about science in the end. Like, how many times have you participated in a project proposal writing, and everybody takes care about the technical and scientific work packages, and then right 1 week before the deadline, oh, who are we going to give communication to? And this is a big mistake. I actually have a movement where I'm trying to hashtag from work package 8 to work package 2. So communication normally goes at the end of the work packages. Why don't we put it on the second work package? Exactly. But of course, jargon. Yeah, Laura, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to touch on the fear of oversimplifying. I come from journalism, so I've also been on the side of reporting on science for a very long time. And I know that is the biggest fear, especially with the media, of like, oh, they're going to get my science and they're going to simplify it. And I just want to touch on 3 quick things that may be useful. The first one is to draw red lines around the things that are most important not to be misunderstood. Not everybody's going to understand everything, but what are like the 2 things that you're like, these are the things that we can't simplify, they are core to the understanding. The second thing is to understand that there's never going to be enough time to explain it all, but you can also guide curious people towards other resources, which is what I did in the conversation. So if you do want to read the papers, here's a QR code. If you want to meet like the team, here's a QR code. Like, not understanding that not every single piece of media needs to contain the whole universe in it, but it can be just like a link in a chain that draws curious people to further engagement, and that also relieves some of the stress. And I think last but not least, addressing the assumptions you think people are going to make already makes a sense. So if you're like, oh, they're likely going to oversimplify, say it out loud. Say, this is the kind of thing that some people would think I'm saying big waves are whatever. But actually, and that's also part of what I did in the presentation. I was like, you would think that this is easy to do, and I'm going to try to get you to do it. And now you notice that it's hard, and therefore you kind of address those proactively in a way that's not condescending, but you're like, it would be very easy for people to reach that conclusion. So those are just some techniques that I think help address this very normal fear that can definitely be managed.
Yeah, I would like to add, if we have marine scientists in the audience, as I believe we do, I believe all of you know what water column is. When you go to the outside world, ask the people in the cafe, what is the water column? Or research cruise. Is that a place, an occasion where a lot of researchers go on holidays on a boat? And so on. So try to put yourself in the skin and the shoes of those you are talking to, not your peers, but like your family and friends and the people on the streets. Are they going to understand these words and this jargon that we all use without even considering the rest of the people? And sometimes, as we've been addressing, we need to, this perhaps is where you can explain things differently, and just throwing a, like the other day, I was listening to this deterministic models. Oh, because we use deterministic model. What is a deterministic model? Like, so don't assume people know. We really need to explain things and be creative. This is the fun part. Use analogies, use real life examples, compare terms with little parts of the story, for example, and so on. I don't remember if we have more questions, Anna. I think we might have one more. Yeah, exactly. I believe this is the last one, correct, Anna? Yeah, exactly. So
Sorry, Chad. No, we still have
two more.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I'm not seeing them all. Yeah, fine. Okay, so imagine you're speaking to a coastal community affected by your research topic. Let's imagine, for example, if we're still talking about waves, let's think about coastal hazards, coastal erosion. Let's imagine a fisherman village or a local indigenous community living somewhere in a remote place, and they are clearly affected by that problem. What metaphors, images, stories, or facts would you use to connect exactly what we were discussing? Like, how do you make them understand this is relevant for them and they make them want to learn more? Their children, great. The past, fantastic. You can bring up memories from, I don't know, hurricanes that happen, I don't know when. Make it personal, yeah. Make them feel this is going to hit you. Real life, everyday implications. It used to be like this, it's going to be like that. Exactly, great. Trending memes.
I love that so much. You could easily do what people think I do when I do wave science, what I actually do when I do wave science type of style. Like, I think that's interesting.
Yeah. Cases of coastal erosion in another countries. Exactly, the comparisons. Like, oh, you've seen this happening somewhere. Okay, we might be the next one on the list, I don't know, their usual day, pre and post photos. This is really cool. We just did, so for those of you in Europe, you probably remember a couple of weeks ago, we had a former hurricane Erin swell hitting the west of Europe, like the biggest waves probably ever in August. And it was great to see how the beaches were before and after, because everybody was at the beach and everybody was documenting on social media. So you could show it and people really could see, oh, yeah, now I understand what these swells can do to the coast. Because if I don't go to the beach in winter, if I'm a beach goer that only goes to the beach in summer, with that gigantic swell right in August, and with social media, we could show the effect of a storm and the hazards and then the risks that come with it, for example. Do we have anything else below, Anna? passion. Oh, this is, yeah, I love this. I mean, most people that work in marine science, I wouldn't say most because I don't have the data, but I would say a lot of people that work in marine science have a big passion for the sea. It's one of the things in the planet that is easier to love. It's the ocean. Everybody loves the ocean, even people living in landlocked countries. I remember once I was in Nepal, and my guide in a hiking in the Himalayas, he wanted to know so much about the ocean. It was amazing, his curiosity about the ocean. So use this to engage with the people and to really convince them that we need all to protect the ocean. Okay, and so it's easier. Yeah.
Threat to the economy is also a powerful one, usually also if you speak to more political stakeholders. So a way that I could have started the conversation was actually like, did you know that surfing brings this amount of billions to Portugal every year? And did you know that this is all based on competitions? And did you know that the most powerful people at the top of the charts can actually not even measure who had the biggest wave? And we can't because of a scientific issue. And like you could reverse engineer and putting in the problem or the potential harm at the beginning, so as to make the rest interesting. And that tends to work better with obviously policy or industry. But yeah, the economic pragmatism is a very compelling argument for a lot of the science that we do.
This is a great point. For those who only think about the monetary value of things, what Laura said is key. And sometimes that's the way to go. Sometimes, depending on your audience, you really need to focus on the economics of it. Yeah, I mean, we could be here all day exploring this great feedback for you guys. Fantastic, well done. And I guess we can move on to what I believe is the final one. And now, considering that we are in a ocean literacy and a EU for Ocean exercise here in these few days, and congrats, Dina and Anna, for putting up this thing. This is great. Final question for you guys, I believe, is how much do you think better science communication could improve ocean literacy in society? So is this like the second example of Laura? Is this really important? Kind of important, or not important at all? So please let us. Okay, we can see the results. I mean, after this talk, it's evident. It contributes a lot, obviously. I mean, it's not enough to have the data. It's not enough to generate the knowledge about the ocean. It's not enough to publish all those papers. We really need to invest and to dedicate time and energy and creativity and resources to really good, impactful, effective science communication if we want to improve society's levels of ocean literacy. I mean, there's no way around. The public is not going to read papers or reports. So we really need to dedicate a lot of our work to improve the way we communicate. Laura?
And I'm inspired by, inspired by Eric and the science behind the science framework, which I think is really useful. To note that one of the issues when I work with scientists that gets brought up the most in this context, like will this help, is the belief that people don't care about scientists or don't believe scientists, especially nowadays. There's like an increased lowering of trust towards institutions, including academic institutions. So a lot of the scientists say to me, oh, but people won't care, people don't like us, people will see us as the enemy. And actually, there's recent research from 68 different countries, the most comprehensive study ever done on the sentiment of folks towards science and environmental science. And the results are people actually do still trust scientists on average a lot, in ways that sometimes can be counterintuitive. So religious folks tend to trust science more. Like there's a lot, if you want the study, it's on my LinkedIn somewhere. But what's interesting is that the one thing they say is not that they don't trust scientists, is that they think scientists don't care about them. And so to that point, that's a block. It's not people don't think that scientists care about scientists or that research is important. They think scientists don't care about us. And that is the whole goal of ocean literacy, right? So thought I'd drop that nugget in there. Yeah, I'll drop the link. Let me find the link and I'll drop it.
I believe there is just one final question
Oh, one more. Oh, okay. All right. So to conclude, okay, this one is really, really personal, I think. Well, the other one too, but this one is particularly. What is the one skill? And you can type in directly, I think. This is a word cloud or something like that. What is the one skill you would like to improve in your own presentations to make your science more accessible and so you could boost ocean literacy? Confidence, wow. Easy speaking goes together, I think. Better skills to design images. Again, think about what we discussed. Do not leave this to the end. Confidence, confidence. Yeah, everybody feels like they are not confident enough. Catch the attention of the audience. Story. Have a story to tell. Relate to real world situations, and people will listen to you. The focus only on 100% important stuff and leave out the details. We spoke about this before. Storytelling, confidence, digital tools, acquire tools to design and storytelling. Why don't you hire a designer? You don't have to do everything, as we discussed. The hook, great one. The hook. We approach this in different ways. There has to be something right from the beginning. You know, you're going to use that to get people's attention. Like you have just a few seconds to do it. So go ahead. Do not consume people's attention in the beginning with who did the work, who are the scientific partners. Do not spend the first logo to show logos, the first slide with logos, etc., etc., etc. Like right from the beginning, you want to catch the attention.
Yeah.
Really,
There's a couple,
yeah.
if you're thinking about hooks, there's a couple routes to go that are like 3 routes to go that are easy in the sense of like one hook can just be anything that's curiosity inducing. So if I show you a video and tell you it's going to be important, if I say, did you know? Or if I say this has never been shown before, anything that engages curiosity can be a really good hook. The other is shock or surprise. If I say, did you know this $2 billion industry depends on something we can't measure, that's kind of shock value stuff. And the third is just connecting to something they care about. So the hook can be, you know, you've been in this community for centuries, you've all seen the coast degrade. I'm going to tell you about something that may stop it from happening. So I think really, shock, curiosity induction, or centering a problem that is relevant to the audience. Versions of those work every time.
Yeah, great point. Thanks, Laura. I just saw a comment that actually ended up disappearing, and I read the word fun. Yeah, there it is. Less but accurate and needed information, but in a fun way. When you are funny, you don't stop being professional and reliable and accurate. So when you are communicating, you don't have to be tremendously serious, let's say. And especially when you are talking to these kind of audiences, you know. So, for example, a lot of you mentioned when you present a talk, you think about the youth, and we know that when we talk about ocean literacy, a lot of times we're dealing with the youth. And what's better than having fun things to show to get their attention, right? So really practice this. Think about how can you be funny without being like silly, which is different. And nobody's going to think whatever you're saying is not true or not scientifically verified, let's say.
A way
yeah.
to respect people's time. Like I tortured you for 5 minutes on the first presentation, and it feels bad because, you know, our time on earth is limited. And so, you know, amusing people or, you know, doing a joke or making them smile, it genuinely is at a very core level a way to say, I am respecting your time and I understand that like it is valuable that you're paying attention. So I'm going to try to make it worth your while. And I think that's the way that fun is also perceived.
Yeah. Again, as I said, we could stay here the whole day exploring your brilliant and amazing and very relevant feedback. I mean, every time Anna goes down on the screen, I see things that I would like to explore, but I know our time is limited. And I know Laura has something to show you as a wrap up that kind of tells the whole story in different ways. So Laura, if you wanna conclude.
Yeah, thank you all so much for the feedback. That was our intention with Tiago, was exactly this. Like, there is already so much knowledge in the room about what makes a good and bad presentation. And we have already all been submitted to good and bad science, communication materials in our lives. So we wanted to be able to upwell like all this knowledge, but for you to move on with a certain sense of clarity, which we have also decided today that clarity matters a lot in presentations and ocean literacy in general, and not to add to the entropy of things. We've created a little framework that hopefully is going to help you be able to think through how to implement everything we talked about in your science communication. And I called it like the pyramid of great science communication, which basically looks like we start at the bottom with accessibility. Everything you put out there, before it can be memorable and funny and beautiful and and emotionally moving, it needs to be accessible. And that's where a lot of our science communication falls. And that's where a lot of the first presentation was terrible. It was visually inaccessible. The jargon made it like, cognitively inaccessible too. I spoke too fast. My tone was hard to follow. So the first part is like, how can we make this accessible? And some of the notes here, and a lot of it you've already discussed, are things like format and the design. Does the clarity of the design? Good design is kindness. So that's where accessibility comes in. The second presentation was just more visually accessible. No jargon, translation if needed, diversity of media types is also a form of accessibility. Not everybody may have great hearing. Not everybody may kind of memorize the same things or enjoy the same formats. And so I tried to mix it up with like graphics and video, and a consideration for differently abled folks in our groups. So that can be the fact that, my slides were terrible. If anybody's, has any like eyesight issues, like accessibility needs to be the base. And to be honest, if you're gonna like invest on anything before you go and spend a lot of money trying to find the right meme, can we just make sure at a base level that our presentations are physically, cognitively, and just, in terms of design, accessible and clear to people? There's a lot of guidance about that online. You can look at Good Design. You can look at the Thalassophile project, which is, part of like, it's a UN Ocean Decade project by Rana, and she's doing incredible work in showing how to translate like ocean science for folks with all sorts of different abilities. Let's just start with accessibility. Once you have that covered, you're like, okay, my presentation is not an eyesore. The jargon is not going to give somebody, a stroke. And I think it's translated into the languages or the cultural context where it needs to be. Then we move on to the second part, which is relatability. And that's a lot of your feedback was also about relatability. So is it timely? Is it relevant to my life right now? Is it culturally relevant? If I'm in Nazaré, I'm going to talk about surfing because like that's what matters there. Am I adding personal stories? Am I using local or niche stories that if I was in Nazaré, I would be like, remember in 92 when that huge wave came and grandpa's fought about it for months because nobody knew how tall he was. We could have known, like, that type of stuff. Relatability is really important because it is the answer to the question I just asked earlier, which is, do scientists care about us? They're asking us to care about the science, but do they care about us? And I think that's the section where you can make sure that you have done your homework, that you use case studies, and also that you use a call to action. That's also relatable. It's saying, and here's what I want you to do. In the case of my presentation, it was like, and here's how you can join, or here's how you want to add. That also helps people understand how they fit in the equation. So they're not just being told about plankton, but they're being told about how these relates to them or how they can do different when they go to the beach next time or whatever it is. So relatability is the second thing, and they do need to be taken in this order because otherwise we end up kind of sometimes wasting our effort. And last, but definitely not least, if we have a presentation that is accessible, clear, beautifully designed, that is relatable, that is timely, that it's leveraging what they care about, be it the economy or their children's future, and that has like some case studies in there that are specific to the context. Then we go into the magic bit, which is memorability. Could we get people to actually remember this? Because there's a direct correlation in between the science people remember and the science people act on. I don't have to tell you this. And so that's where I saw with these on the comments, that's where analogies and metaphors are super useful. you know, if I say like the way we're measuring waves is like throwing a GoPro inside a washing machine, it may be easier for you to remember. So what are the analogies, the metaphors that we can use? How can we inject emotion, which triggers memory creation? So in my case, I engendered emotion by showing you this, women risking their lives. That does something. And that emotion could be compassion for future generations. That emotion could be nostalgia for, the guys we used to know and love. How can you filter emotion in there? Same with humor. We just talked about it. Being fun, relatable, making people smile, makes people want to remember the context of that positive experience more often. Surprise can be one. So at the end, I could be like, and you're all invited to come see it or look outside your window or a free resource that you were not expecting. And playing with high contrast. So the people who mentioned flow, that goes a long way for memorability. And it's the same with humor. Tempo makes something interesting. So if we do high contrast, huge problem, cheap solution, huge problem, cheap solution. Or if we do, massive fear relief because we have figured it out, massive fear relief because we have figured it out. Like if we keep taking our audiences through points of high contrast between the problem and the solution, they're also much more likely to remember it. And last but not least, the interaction, right? Like you're just much more likely to remember this session because you were actually inputting your own thoughts and feelings into it. And so whether it is a physical presentation, whether it is an event, whether it is, as a kit for schools to learn about ocean acidification, maybe try next time thinking through these 3 buckets in that order. How can I make it accessible? If it is for kids, how does that have to happen? Then how can I make it relatable? If it is for kids, maybe I'll use some of their favorite cartoon examples. And how can I make it memorable? If it is for kids, let's say we could add some humor and we could use like a metaphor of something that they already know in their area. So hopefully that just gives you a bit of a cognitive scaffolding to hold on to when you bring your expertise or when you try to talk to colleagues about what to focus on at each stage of science communication, which I much agree with Tiago, should start happening way earlier on in the research process. Because if those conversations were happening as the research is being conducted, maybe some of those examples would already come up naturally. Maybe some of those ideas for visualization would already naturally evolve so that by the end, you're also not feeling that crammed and exhausted, to be honest. It's also when you're at your most tired to have to do this work. So hopefully we're going to share these also, but hopefully this framework is useful in just filtering some of what you already feel in your body, feels like a good presentation and not a great one. And just to end on the point of confidence comes strictly from preparation. You're all very confident scientists because you've done it before. And so confidence doesn't come from a personal, personality thing at all. I'm a trained actor. That's why I don't freak out at presentations. I used to do this all the time. But preparation is the most important thing. And if you go through this process enough, and if you record yourself presenting, I think confidence is a natural effect of that. So yeah, hopefully that was useful.
Thank you, Laura. And I guess now it's over to Anna and Dina. On my side, thank you for your attention and your feedback.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you both. It was really good to listen from you. And we still have time for a
See you next
debate
time.
with the participants. So I think could be good to hear. We can open the floor for the participants if you want to bring any type of example of or even an insight from those talks and from what you think. We can leave the floor open to you now. You are a bit shy, but we really would like to hear from you. And
maybe I can start, actually.
Go ahead, please.
I wasn't sure if I should raise a hand or if I should just start talking. I just wanted to say I really, really loved the way you decided to start this session. When the first presentation was on with the recording, you 100% had me. I was kind of thinking like, what's happening now? Is this for real? So kudos to you. I learned a lot on how to get into this kind of conversation. Absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed that. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. I think it's about the feeling too, right? Like I can tell you the importance of good science communication, or I can show you bad science communication, so it makes you want to puke. And that is probably going to be more memorable. So we were trying to walk our talk in the way that we were presenting things, but thank you. And to anyone who left early and does not know that I'm actually not this bad, I may have dilapidated my career, but I think it was worth it for the rest that remained. If anybody has specific questions too, like if you're struggling with something specific, I feel like there's enough expertise in this room. If you're like, I'm presenting to this particular audience, or I've struggled with this particular thing, you know, Tiago's a wealth of knowledge too. So don't hesitate to be specific.
Unless there are questions, I will step in. We are here discussing ocean literacy, so different contexts. And actually, interestingly, yesterday we saw that presentations at conferences, what you shared today, was one of the major ways people share ocean literacy. So we're not speaking only about scientific knowledge or scientific conferences, but they also see this as an ocean literacy tool. So that was extremely relevant. But if we step outside of the conference setting and look at, for example, speaking with school children, we feel that many scientists find it a little bit scary to go and to speak to children. It's very fun thing to do, but to have the first step and to engage with the teachers and to push a little bit into the school to have such a class take place. Do you have any kind of insights on how do you think you can break this barrier, and what could be the techniques that you've been using maybe in collaboration with younger audiences?
I think I can say something about that, Dina. I actually have a project in which I give research papers about marine problems to teenagers in high schools.
Brilliant.
And I gave them the research paper. We're talking about those amazing research paper published in the peer-reviewed journals, okay? The heavy ones. And I asked the teenagers, hey guys, is this interesting? And if so, is there anything relevant there for you? And if so, if you have to tell a story about this to your family and friends, how would you do it? And guess what? In this project, which is called Project 19, we discovered that we thought they were going to go to TikTok to tell stories about the papers. They didn't. They did theater plays. They wrote songs. They did street art graffitis. They did podcasts and so many things. The project is available. You can have a look to see the results. And this is a great way to go from the formal education where they are learning about the ocean and they might feel kind of, oh, I don't want to learn about the ocean this way, to a way that they have fun while they're learning. And then they can be advocates. They can be champions for the ocean with their, for example, with their theater plays or their short movies or so on. So I guess this is a great way to bridge scientific outputs into something that people can take into their lives and then amplify the messages and make more people know about the problems of the ocean, for example.
It's beautiful work. Tiago, do you have a website for it that you could drop in the chat?
Yeah, I'll put it here.
Yeah, because I've seen presentations of the work and it's like goosebump, like watching like full theater plays about ocean acidification is like goosebump worthy. I think it touches on what were going to be my recommendations. So I've also engaged quite a bit in turning specifically like ocean research into school curriculums, things like that. So for example, I know Eric is an ocean drifter guy, so we did a project called Adopt a Drifter in Mallorca, where every single school would name and adopt one of the drifters in a recent campaign. And then they would learn through ocean science through the adoption of the drifter. And I think for the youth, and that includes Gen Z, authenticity matters enormously. The youth nowadays has a very high radar for fakeness. And they will disengage if they think they're pandered to. So being authentic, being genuinely engaged, but also not hiding things that are uncomfortable, I think matters a lot. The other one is engagement, as Tiago was saying. If you allow them to participate, they will take ownership and be much more willing. So in our case, the engagement started with a simple fact, which was like, just pick a name for the drifter, and people came up with the funniest purple hippopotamus type of things, and it was adorable. But then they were already bought into it in a way that then made it much easier to say the engagement today is to follow it and learn, you know, which ocean systems is it gliding over. And I think last but not least, this idea of providing choice in the way they want to interact also helps a lot. So if you can say, you know, you can go into groups, or you can choose this activity or this activity, children, again, buy in more when they have any sort of choice. We need not be chaotic, you know, but it could be like, would you like to do that by writing, or would you like to do that by drawing if it's like smaller kids? So they have that buy-in. And yeah, and also ask the teachers, they know them so well. So you can be like, what have they been looking at? What are the cultural references they bring up on class all the time? Like, you know, are they all into Minecraft? Then maybe let's use that as a thing. Sometimes we don't ask teachers enough, but they're so knowledgeable, and they love being, you know, also given the opportunity. So sorry, Melita, I just saw your hand.
No, thanks. I think not really specifically, but in general, this webinar is really a great thing for the scientific community to understand the need for communication, because I think it's still partly on an individual level who has a feeling for doing that or not. Dina, you mentioned the MC conference last week, and it was really it was a great conference, and it always comes to that we are kind of lacking the systematic, let's say, approach of the scientific community towards communication, because it's still at the individual level, in our surroundings. There's a lot of cases when you do that and your colleagues look at you like, what is she doing? You know, that's not her purpose. That's not what she's supposed to do. And I think this negative view of our colleagues in our environments, for us doing that outreach activities and communication, is an issue that we need to overcome, because it's still not, let's say, validated as much as it should be. And we are still seeing only like our value of a scientist still just seen through the number and the quality of research papers. And I think this is like the basic thing that we need to change a little bit. And that's why I said like this webinar is very important for general scientific community to realize why this is important, why this outreach and communication is important, and how that can contribute to the level of ocean literacy and to solving some local problems, issues, and to connect actually with the local community. Because on the other hand, we want the society to understand that we are important, and that our work is important. And on the other hand, it's very few individuals that actually provide that knowledge back to the local community through scientific communication, through science communication.
If I may, 100%, I think it's one of the most common things where people get frustrated. I'm like, well, you know, the people who tend to volunteer for this work are always often unacknowledged within their own research institutions, or not given the resources to do it. I think a few ways to counter this is, one, leverage things like today's training to say, hey, this is, and obviously, you know, like all the amazing partners behind it, to say this is not a negotiable anymore. This is an expectation. These are frameworks that other institutions are working within. Leverage, I know the competition between the research centers, like just say it, everybody else is getting on it. Just say, oh, this center is doing it, this center is doing it, this center is funding their people to do it, they're getting ahead, they're gonna get more press, which is gonna get to you when you don't get it. Let's like admit, let's behave as if instead of you having to justify wanting to do outreach, people should have to justify not doing it. And, you know, without shaming, but let's start behaving like this is commonplace. This comes with the territory, funding for it needs to be unlocked, and other institutions are already doing it, and we are going to fall behind if we don't. I think is all like very fair. And in terms of inside institutions, maybe what I've seen work is not to silo oceans communication as its own discipline, but to create more horizontal task forces where folks who naturally are interested in it or have done a project that was really, well received, can come together and create a bit of a horizontal task force to lobby upwards in terms of like, hey, we're doing this work, but we need more resource. And also educate downwards to their colleagues saying, hey, I know it's scary to do presentations, but we did this one and it went really well. And if you want, we can show you how you did it. And I think it's good to create these hybrid groups that are not just the education department and God forbid anyone else does anything outside it, but it's also not siloed between just individuals, as you say, Melita, that end up feeling like they're doing the extra work for no extra credit. So yeah, sorry, Anna.
Would you like to share with the participants some recent experience that I had when talking to the media? Because when you send, for example, a press release or you have the opportunity to talk to a journalist, it's not that they will call you to speak in 5 weeks or in 1 month. They will call you to speak tomorrow. So generally, you don't have enough time to prepare yourself to talk to them. You already need to be ready. So it made me reflect on how we need to frame our messages actually all the time and have, something on our pocket to talk to journalists, so we are not unprepared for a talk, or because we want visibility for ocean literacy, we want this space for ocean literacy, but if when we have this space we are not prepared, this can be also a shame, for the scientists or the whole ocean literacy community, because we are not using on the best way that space. So I just wanted to show this experience, because actually, I mean, I had this opportunity to talk to a journalist very recently, and I have, very, 5 minutes really to prepare myself. So I reminded, okay, I know this topic, I prepared for this for years, it's been years I'm working on that, so I have this and this and those messages to talk. So, the timing also to talk to journalists is also always very limited, and this is something we need to. So I'd like to hear from you, Thiago and Laura, if you also have some regarding this aspect as well.
I think Thiago has thoughts about doing things.
Yeah, I would like to share with you my personal experience with the media. There was this really good science journalist in Portugal that one day I was getting frustrated because I was sending press releases about like these new projects and these new initiatives, and no journalist was picking them up. And I was very frustrated. And then because I was still following, let's say, a very research focused viewpoint, let's call it this way, I wanted my project to be known, and then the journalist just looked at me and said, and what makes you think the public wants to know about your project? They want to know about scientific achievements that have a meaning and a relevance in their lives. They don't necessarily want to know a project that just started. That's not news. So a lot of project coordinators focused on KPIs and like showcasing that they did whatever was written in the project proposal. They force the communication people to issue press releases, and then they question, why wasn't this published in a newspaper, for example? And the reason is this: there was no meaningful achievement in the press release. There is telling the people that the new project started. Come on, there's projects started every day. Why should that be on the news? Once you have something really, really tangible, really meaningful, when you check all the aspects that Laura wrapped up in the end, that's the time you go for a press release.
I think this goes so well with a question that we had on the chat from Akanbi. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. He said there's so much bad science narratives like in the media, because bad news quickly moves, which I think is what we saw in Eric's presentation. How can the scientists change the narratives? News coming from the highest level of policymakers is becoming alarming. So I think that the answer to Anna, to your situation, it is like more regular media training for scientists is one, and it just needs to happen. And you cannot, again, be waiting for the tornado or the flood or the ocean spill to happen to put scientists in those positions. I think more regular training needs to be acknowledged. And the second one is also understanding your power. Like, you do have power as a source to journalists. And I know this because I used to be a journalist reporting on the environment for many years before I did this. And there's a difference in between asking to see the article or, you know, telling the journalist what to do and helping them understand how easily they can mess it up. Because journalists have very little time, very little resource, and are absolutely terrified of getting it wrong. And if you say, hey, you know, you may like do this. These are some of the actual factual mistakes that you're likely to make if you don't understand the paper, or these are some of the conclusions that people may reach, but that are actually not true. That's not what we're saying. If you do that proactively, journalists will appreciate it. And you can always ask to check your specific quote, for example, not the whole article. And you can volunteer to review it even from a friendly place of like, hey, if you ever need me to check any of the facts in it or anything, journalists like really appreciate that. So you have more leverage than you think. And I think a lot of scientists kind of cower when actually, if you do it from a place of respect, journalists really appreciate it. But to the thing about bad news, and I, again, know this because I used to report on very sad things for a living, is I actually think bad news are important. And I think trying to force a positive angle is not only unuseful, but potentially unethical, right? So if you're looking at coastal erosion or ocean, you know, or climate change, the data says what the data says. And if the data says that we are reaching record levels of something, I think it's actually unuseful to try to massage these data to say, we can still avoid some sort of worst case scenario that would have been the worst case scenario 2 years ago, you know? Where I think positivity is really important, and it is not on the scale of the challenge, but on the power of the solution. Positivity is really important to build agency in people. Examples of, we just saw it with the BBNJ, examples of what can be done, what has been done, the progress that has been made. Look, 2 years ago, we didn't even know about this, and now we're like figuring out a solution. That's where you go hard on the positive message. So what I think is best for the media is to, you know, not try to minimize or soften what are de facto bad news, because we are lying to the public, like these are very serious issues, but always add, frame or focus the fact that there is so much that can be done, or so much that has already been done, or proof of positive action that has happened around that issue. And I think that's what's missing. I think we're not building people's sense of agency. And there's actually a lot of behavioral science that shows that people who have a high sense of agency take more environmental action. So the difference is not whether or not they're very worried. The difference is whether or not they believe they can do something about it. So we have nailed the worry part. We need to continue putting out those numbers because we're not going to lie to the public. But the part that we're not nailing is the building agency in people and in communities part. And I think that can be done through social proof. It can be done through examples. It can be done through low-lived actions where like you ask them to do something that at the start seems simple, but then leads to further engagement because people are like, oh, I'm already, you know, I already did the one thing. And I think that's where positivity matters. So when I hear people say we need more positive news, yes, but we need to deploy them where they make the biggest difference, which is in building people's belief that there is still much they can do, that the power is in their hands, and that like the future that they want for their kids is still possible. And we can do that while saying, you know, we're going to be underwater soon. Those are not an either or in my book, I think. Sorry, Tiago, go ahead.
I saw a really interesting question on the chat, I think was by Teresa Fonseca. She was asking, what is a meaningful achievement? Going back to the conversation on when to communicate to the public at large. That is an amazing exactly because of that. And because we are here in EU4Ocean and in a European context, if you look at the European Commission definitions, you probably find the answer. So the European Commission, especially for Horizon Europe projects, states that we have science outputs, outcomes, and impact. When you reach impact, that's when you want to be on the news. Something you achieved or you manage your work to have an impact in society. But let's break down what these things mean, because for a lot of people, it's not clear the difference between a science result an output, an outcome, and then impact. Science results, I believe all of you know what they are. They're a direct result of your work, okay? Science outcome is something that it's something that can be exploited beyond the scientific community. For example, imagine we were talking about waves and coastal zone management and so on. So imagine your work is, your research is about developing a new numerical model that can forecast with great hyperlocal resolution the impacts of storms on the coast. So that's the outcome of your work. That model, that system, that forecasting system is the outcome of your work. And let's say you manage to have 20 municipalities in your area using that system. So there you start talking about an outcome. You're already starting having your research being you're already starting having your research being used by the stakeholders, by the end users. And you can even put a number on it. 20 municipalities somewhere started using this new research output. And then with that, let's say you manage to minimize the levels of risk and you manage to avoid concrete problems in the coast. For example, with your system, you could tell port authorities that a new storm is coming and they can remove the material and the equipment and infrastructure to a safer place. Or you can tell the civil protection that during that particular time of the day with a high tide and the peak of the swell, perhaps the seafront is going to be overtopped by waves and it's not safe at all for people. So with that, you can say we minimize the impact, the risks in a percentage. If you do this through time, you can say something. In the last few years, these municipalities working with researchers, they managed to minimize the consequences, the big bills, the loss of life, it's the damage of infrastructure with the output, with the outcome of research. So when you reach that, you have your headline for a newspaper. Coastal zone managers improved in 20-something%, whatever. So that's where you build on your story. And then finally, when a journalist can go into that, he or she can provide the examples of your papers, of your reports, of your websites, and so on and on and on. In practical terms, this is like, do not go on social media saying that someone from your research center just published a paper and put the header of the paper. Don't do that. Tell a story about why that is relevant for society, and then to give it some scientific credibility, write down where they can learn by putting the link to the newspaper. So flip the approach, flip the storytelling, go to the meaningful achievement and not to the personal ego massaging event of, oh, I published a paper. Okay, so that would be my suggestion and my reply to the great question by Teresa back in the chat.
I think this connects to another question in the chat that I see from Maria. I also wanted to note that, also proactive monitoring matters. So for example, if you're a researcher, you're keeping up to date with the papers that are coming out on your subject. We need to do the same with news, right? So whether you use software, whether you use an agency like us to help you monitor, the answer of what impactful is depends on time. So if it's September and kids are coming back to school, the knowledge that most kids feel happier in the ocean, super relevant. Or if it's the middle of summer and you know something about jellyfish that, you know, are growing because of climate change and making beaches less attractive to tourists, super relevant in August. And that wouldn't be news in December. It just wouldn't. And so part of it is like, how can we monitor news in our regions? And how can we either use software or just like our day-to-day news aggregators to make sure that we reach out to journalists before or after what is relevant. And that also may go for international events. You know, if UNOC is happening, if COP is happening, then journalists may be more keen to know what you know about ocean currents potentially collapsing. As a journalist, timeliness was 90% of how I judged relevance. And there was like stories that I was like, oh, this is so beautiful, but nobody's going to care about because it's December and it's Christmas. And so trying to tie that timeliness, I think, matters a lot. And there's this beautiful question from Ria, which goes back to the negative part. But when working, with a scientific community, how do you explain your data that is good, but like do it in a way to not scaremonger? Basically, they have tried mitigation methods first. Basically, how do you express data without scaring people into paralysis? Because we do know that also happens. The way I go through this is I think fear is actually an equation. It's not a sole factor. You're not just scared. What makes something scary is your perception of something bad happening divided by your perception of your ability to handle it. So for example, Tiago is a really big surfer. In the same wave, I would be dying, like just passing out of panic. And Tiago would be fine. And the wave is the exact same size. It's the perception of what we can do about it that makes it a fearful thing or not a fearful thing. And I think that's why building up that agency that I was talking about matters. But at a very practical level, you can literally map it out with your colleagues. You can be like, what's all the top heavy things that we have? The things that we know are going to happen, we know are scary, we know we can't change in this equation. And if it's really big, if there's like a lot at the top, you just need to add more to the bottom. And adding more to the bottom can look like historical proof of times that we have handled similar projects. And they not even need to be in the ocean. You can be like, hey, with plastics, now we drink them all the time, but just 15 years ago, we would have all been smoking. Like you can just remind people of the times that historically we've done it. The more specific the contract, the more important. I think you can also not condescend people and let them into, some people really enjoy this, let them into the fact that like this is only bad news if it paralyzes them, that a lot of these headlines are self-fulfilling. So you can say this will be fine as long as we don't believe it too much. Because if we believe it too much, then we're going to stop taking action and we're going to make it happen. So it's actually your fear that is going to make this a reality. It's some sort of like fairy tale. It is self-fulfilling. And if you say that out loud to people, people recognize it and they're like, oh yes, it is my, my belief in the inevitability of this outcome that actually makes it inevitable. And it is not inevitable if we choose that we don't believe that it is. So you can name the dynamic and it makes it easier for people. Other things that increase people's capacity to deal with it is obviously if you make them feel strong and good and capable, and if you don't condescend them, and if you make them feel a high sense of trust. Anna, from yesterday's conclusions, trust really matters. So if people have high trust in authority, institution, or each other as a community, they're much more likely to take action. So you can remind them of that. You can say, look, there's already, even in this call, let's say that the feeling is, hey, nobody cares about ocean literacy. What Melita was saying, we're doing this, but nobody appreciates it. I could say, well, there's already hundreds of us here. And the influence of hundreds of us, if we decide to make this a no-brainer and to start treating it like this is just a must-have, could be huge. We are literally reaching 60 countries. We can, and that would increase your sense of confidence in the fact that oh yeah, this is more likely. So if it's useful, Ria, consider fear as an equation. And if you have no option but to have a lot on the negative column, let's just proactively bring more on the positive so that it continues to come up in favor of action.
Thank you so much, Laura. I think we can start to wrap up for tomorrow. I still have a hands raised, Yolanda, if you can quickly ask. And then
very short question. Okay, maybe we can face the anxiety and fear of our audience. But what about when we have an audience and we have a lot that they feel that, okay, I don't do anything in order to face the problem because the governance, the politics ignore me, ignore my my actions, my activities, my motivation. They say they are talking about recycling, and they put the recyclable, let's say, material in where they have to, and they feel that they are how to say that the government, the authorities are making fun of them because actually they don't do recycling. So they say, I don't want to do it. I don't care if they, it is useless to do it. What do we say to these people? Because, they feel that they do something in vain.
Early, yeah. I think first we understand that there's just so much we can do as scientists, and that what you're talking about is the erosion of trust in institutions that is happening throughout Europe. And it's happening because of income inequality, it's happening because of a media landscape that's balkanized, it's happening because of reasons that us as individual scientists, it's just way above our pay grade. So I think just give yourself the grace to be like, this sucks. This is not fully my fault or my responsibility to help solve. However, that said, I think some of the things we can do is first help them understand that small groups can have a large impact, and that being annoying or shaming institution works. So whether you want to use a metaphor like, try sleeping with a mosquito, or whether you want to use an example of like, hey, we thought the same about this stuff a few years ago, and now they're doing it, and they're only doing it because a group of moms got together, and we can find those examples. And otherwise, maybe trying to find institutions they do believe in. That works a lot at the local level. So is there a church context? Is there a school? Is there a place where they feel like they have higher agency so that they can get momentum on the big institution? So it can be like, groups of fishers, it can be groups of moms, it can be the football club. If the football club said, why are we recycling the plastic cups? There's no point to it. And they generate a lot of money for the mayor, maybe they would be listened to. So on one hand, I think just have grace for the fact that this sucks, that we're operating in a world that is like increasingly lower trust, but also try to point to examples, points to institutions they do still believe in, and say, hey, collaboration still works there. And maybe that's the place where you go get more people and then go to the said institution that's ignoring you. And yeah, try to find any example to show that small people can make an oversized impact, which has always been the case. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, it happens to all of us.
Thank you, Laura. I think it's our time to conclude, unless we have.
Luciana.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name, but I see you.
Okay, thank you very much. But it's only the last, just like a short response to both of you. The presentation, I could say that the collaboration, how to present the material today is inspire me a lot. Inspired me personally, because a long time ago when I pursued my PhD degree in Copenhagen University, I joined with a particular course, offline one, how to improve my public speaking skill. But later on, we really into the online course like this one. And then I just got, when both of you lead the course, you give a very practical way how I can imitate it. For example, at the first time, you try to give a very a real example how bad if you do the presentation like the first example, and the second one you compare it with the possibility how you can handle the good presentation. And then afterward, Thiago tried to give the one by one materials, which is basically in the what is the software as the Mentimeters, if I'm not wrong, is it basically the option of the answer of the question is exactly the expected one, but how Thiago can elaborate the discussion is very nice one. And then afterward, I as the participant can really understand what is the major message that you both of you want to deliver. And then my last last and the first question is, I just wonder how I'm from Indonesia actually, and then the young generation scientist movement is quite big right now, and most of them try to decide to be the kind of the influencers in the social media, and then they try to be really into or use the way how to talk with the gens Alpha and Z1, and it's a look like work. And recently, we recognize about the power of the viral phenomena. For example, the particular professor working on the ocean knowledge phenomena, for example, it will work when he can make a kind of the short video and then try to make a very good storytelling, and everyone will give their attention. My point is, I just wonder how it's really work in other country. For example, in your experience, then if you say and confirm that social media is a very powerful, I just wondering how is the recent real connection between the scientist community and the common media right now, because basically
So
we
much for
can
the question. I will
build
have
our
to,
own.
yeah, I
Oh
will
yeah,
have to
sorry.
intervene.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I really
Okay, I
love the
guess.
passion. Thanks so much for your interest.
Uh,
We are at 12 o'clock now. It's the end of the session. We need to let everybody go.
Sorry.
But I think we have. It's true that today's session is not only about what we are discussing, but also how we are discussing. And absolutely agree with you, Laura and Tiago have showed that co-constructing the outcome together is really, really impactful. We all feel the impact that we have participated in something that we found for ourselves through our own engagement. And I think this co-creation and discussion approach in developing solutions together is really, really powerful. And it's something that scientists can really take on board in many ways, and also in how they interact with their audiences. I really loved also, Laura, what you were mentioning about the agency. And I think this today's training is giving the agency not just for the public and how we can inspire agency to them, but also to the scientists, to ourselves, being capable and inspired, and seeing that there is a huge knowledge we all share already, and we actually know how to do things pretty well, but we want to be more confident in applying the skills that agency is really, really crucial. Let me thank you, thank everybody once again, just in the